I am the Buddha Bomb.
Cool. And what is the story behind the name Buddha Bomb?
Well, it's an interesting story, I think. I was at the period where, in my life in the 90s, where I met some DJs and I had been collecting electronic music by myself. And they were starting to teach me DJs, and they said, well, you have to come up with a DJ name. So I went to this Buddhist lawn party, and everybody was drinking margaritas. And I told some people I'm coming up with a DJ name. So at some point, some guy came over to me and said, hey, come here. And he pulled out this bong. He said, you want to do a bong hit? Well, I had had a few margaritas and I was like, well, sure, why not? So I did this bong hit, and I did it, I guess, with a little bit too much enthusiasm. And it just filled this whole like lawn where these Buddhists were sitting around. Unbeknownst to me, they were talking about, God, let's come up with a DJ name. And when I did that, they noticed it, and then somebody said, I know his DJ name is Buddha Bong. So they said Buddha Bong. So I went as Buddha Bong, and I went on the radio for the first time. And I said, hi, this is Buddha Bong, and I'm going to play this and that, and played some music. And then this call came in, and this woman, I answered the phone, and a woman said, hi, did you say your name was Buddha Bomb? That's the most powerful name I've ever heard. And at that moment, I just had this vision of what would a Buddha bomb be. And I saw all these Buddhas just blowing up in all these directions and infecting people with absolute complete consciousness. So I realized at that moment that I was Buddha Bomb. So I said, yes, I'm Buddha Bomb. And then I've been that ever since. And that was in the 90s.
That's amazing. I love the name. Yeah, so let's see. Can you tell me a bit about your journey regarding Buddhist teachings and meditations and like how they kind of led you to discover your musical craft?
Sure, absolutely. And there is a direct tie-in. I mean, basically, I look at it as I had what I call consciousness points in my life. And it really started when I was a child. I remember when I was 10 years old, I used to, look out the window and wonder, why does there have to be anything? What would happen if there was, what would it be like if there was never, ever anything, not a single atom of existence anywhere? And so one night I sort of like went into this contemplation, and the universe actually disappeared, at least in my mind. And I went into this nothingness state. And then all of a sudden I realized my parents were calling me. I was late for dinner. I had to go downstairs, and then the table was set in a certain way, forks to the left, knives to the right, on a checkerboard table. And I went down there and I was in this other state of mind. And I sat down and I just said to the whole family, I said, why does anything, why did anything ever have to exist? And I got back, oh, I don't think about that. That's a waste of time, and I was very affected by it. And so at that time, it became the 60s, early 60s. I was 10 years old in 1962, and there were information about hippies taking LSD and thinking they could fly, and they were jumping out of windows and looking at the sun and going blind and all this. And when I heard that, I thought, that's for me. So a few years later, I sure enough started taking it, and I started hitchhiking around. I was a football player, but I started hitchhiking around the country, and I became a quote unquote hippie, and I did a lot of psychedelic drugs. I traveled around the country. I started meditating, and at some point I realized that LSD was a temporary experience, and I read Buddhist books about mindfulness and enlightenment and about achieving an absolute state of mind. And so that led me into becoming a Buddhist. And so I was a Buddhist. I became formally a Buddhist in the 70s when I was like 20, 22 years old, I think is when I took refuge, became a Buddhist. And I studied Buddhism, I became a software developer. I started a software company. And at one point, I was doing this particular meditation for 3 hours every night. And then I would finish my meditation, and then I would do some software work for a couple hours into the wee hours, 2, 3 in the morning. And one night after a meditation, I turned on the radio, and there was this music that was playing, and it was like something a little bit different, and I didn't know what it was. So I called the radio station. This is about 1991. And I said, "Hey, what's this music that is playing?" Like I was just like resonated with it. It was like so cool. And the guy said, "Oh, it's techno, man." I said, "What's techno?" And so he told me a little bit about it. It's a drum machines, these, different devices, and it's electronically produced. And he gave me a lowdown, and he threw out some names, the Orb and Orbital, and he threw out a few names. So I went to the record store, and I just started collecting electronic music all during the 90s by myself. And it really came from that post meditation experience of really resonating with it. And then later in the 90s, I met some DJs, and that's what I was telling you before. And I learned the art of DJing, and then I already told the story of how I became Buddha Bomb.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that all happened all through the beginning to the end of the 90s. I sort of became Buddha Bomb. And I'm now in my 22nd year on the radio, and I've been playing parties since September of 2001 every week somewhere. Everywhere I go, there's a party, and I'm still doing it.
So when I first met you, it was at a Sagittarius party in Crestone, Colorado. And
Mhm.
um how so to me that was like, you say party, but I just want to clarify for like the viewers what kind of party it is, because party is pretty like wide range. There's a wide range of kinds of parties. But for me, like when I met you, I was in a sober state, going to healing art school, and you really like opened my mind. Your music, how would you describe your music? Because to me, it's not just like, it's more than just an idea of obliteration. You know what I mean? Like there's the consciousness aspect. Like how
Yeah. Well, for me, what I realized just from my experience of meditating and hearing music and how it affected me, that it's music to transform consciousness. So that's how the whole concept of Buddha bomb was to create this Buddha bomb, this explosion of consciousness raising music. So it's a transformative situation that I realized that through the power of the music, I could help facilitate, guide people into higher consciousness states. And I've received many anecdotal reports of people who have told me, like you, of, particular time and place where that happened. Those events, I'll just call it a music event in Crestone. It was led by Calissima, who was a promoter and became a very close friend of mine. And she would bring me down there several times a year. And I would do these long sets, and I would play sort of the history of electronic music, where I would start out with some chill and down tempo, and then I would play some house and tribal house, and then I would play some trance, and then I would play some high energy side trance. But all of the music, the continuity between the different genres of music, they were music that had conscious voice samples or sounds, indigenous sounds, that for me would alter my consciousness. So I went through a lot of music, and then when music would affect me and bend my mind, those are the tracks that I would know that I would need to play for others. So it was a simple formula of me just spending a lot of time with the music, and then realizing how it affected me, and then realizing how it would affect others. And that formula is what I still do. And it seems to be an effective formula. And I still get positive reviews from people who tell me, "Oh man, you wouldn't believe what happened to me that night you played here and there."
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of amazing that that just kind of like practicing your craft and expressing what changes, what like affects your mind state actually does have a similar positive and like vibrational raising effect on other people. And it kind of makes you like think about energy, how energy works.
Well, we're all very much connected. And one of my theories is we're much more the same than we are different. And we do have differences, and it's a good thing because this would be a really boring place if we didn't have differences. So the differences are, I celebrate. But then again, we all breathe. We all have a heartbeat. We all have blood running through us. We have biorhythms. And so when we play music, especially in a large room or outside with the subwoofers, our bodies, our minds are being entrained to that same music so that everybody is syncing their heartbeat with the beat that's coming from the subwoofers and the speakers. And that by synchronizing ourselves and training ourselves to this external source, we actually connect to each other very deeply. And I see this like spontaneous interconnectivity happen at these dances, and it's magic. It's magic. It's the magic. And it's the humanity of what we are is to connect with each other. And so it's just a way to connect very instantly, very deeply with people. People you don't even know you connect with on a very heart level sometimes.
That's so beautiful. I wish more people could experience your music. I feel like, especially in a day and age like today, when there's so much just division, in the country, I'm like, oh, if we could all just vibe.
I'm trying, or I'm on the radio at least 5 or 6 times a month. I'm now live streaming. I was doing about maybe 2 to 3 ecstatic dances a week, and I still give away CDs. I print CDs of my mixes, and I give away my music as much as I possibly can. And now it's fortunate that a lot of people have CD players in their cars because otherwise people wouldn't have a way to play CDs. So I'm still maybe toward the end, but I'm still giving out CDs. as,
That's awesome.
I give out as many as people are willing to take them.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so here's a question I had. Okay, so you had this really like psychedelic or like just really profound existential experience at the age of 10. How would you describe your childhood self?
Well, I had an older brother who got a lot of attention. He was very extroverted. And I grew up, I was very introverted, thoughtful, I suppose. And I remember, he picked on me until I started lifting weights and I turned the tables on my older brother because I became the more athletic and the more powerful person. I was a football star, and that changed things. But when I grew up, I was very shy. I was maybe really afraid to talk to adults. I was sort of intimidated, and so I kind of developed my own little world a lot, where I, just thought a lot. And I remember um, before I, sort of grew up and grew strong, my brother picking on me, and I remember how hurtful it was, and I remember thinking, why would anybody want to hurt somebody else? So I kind of like learned compassion at an early age where I just realized I didn't like to be hurt. I didn't like to be picked on. I didn't like negative things happening to me. And then why would I want to do that to somebody else? So I had that insight when I was young, and it was a good insight to have, and that's carries me a lot. Just that notion, I reflect on that daily, many times.
Did kind of being like would you say pacifistic would be a good descriptor for that kind of, or
Well, I don't know. I never looked at it in those kind of words. It was just more, just kind of realizing that there was no reason to not be kind to people, I
yeah.
suppose. You know, I mean, I was a football player. I wrestled. I played rough sports. I got into a few fights, when I was in high school and college. Been a while, so I probably hung up the gloves a while ago. But my my view was always, I think, affected more by alternate consciousness, and I never, as much as I had to go to Sunday school and church, and I had some aunts who were very religious. I never could buy into the notion that there was a God who would send me to eternal hell. And then they would say, "Well, God loves you," and I'm thinking, God, what if He didn't? You know, how could I? What could I possibly do to deserve being, tortured forever? Like I just couldn't get into it. And I remember my aunt was, her husband was a minister, and she was babysitting for us, and she was like reading this stuff in the Bible, and I just said flat out, just I was probably not even 10 at that point, and I just said to her, "Well, how do we know there is a God?" And she said, her answer was, "God doesn't want you to think about that." And so I thought, wait a second. If there is no God, then there's nobody there who doesn't want me to not think about it. And then you just told me that God was this great being. He created all the entire universe, the cosmos, the heavens, and the earth. And if he was that great, I figured he could allow me a few thoughts. He would want me to think whether he existed or not. So I just didn't buy, for different reasons. That was just one of many episodes where it just never made sense to me. So I was always, in some sense, I was never a conventional person. I never bought into the conventional reality, whether they were trying to program me when I was a kid. I was always a little bit different. I was actually the black sheep in the family. Of course, when my parents were dying, I was there to help them. And so they kind of realized a lot about me later in life. So it's kind of interesting how it all unfolded.
So you bring up some really interesting points. So I really resonate with a lot of that. Okay. And I like to ponder these things. Um, so how would you describe consciousness?
Well, there was that book, Be Here Now, Ram Dass book. And it talked about, being here now, and it has to do with fixating, just shifting your focus from worrying about the future, feeling guilty or whatever about the past, you know, just to look at the immediate of what's here. So we actually have an awareness that is always present. And sometimes we're so scattered and we're in this modern world and we have a million things happening and we're not even aware that we're aware. And so for me, the consciousness is becoming aware that we're aware and looking and examining all of our actions. And it makes such a difference how you talk to people, how you present yourself, how you even walk down the street in terms of how it affects others. And so for me, consciousness is more the awareness of being aware. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, we just think we're some manifestation of the universe. We would not be here if there was no sun, if there was no moon, if there was no earth, if there was no water, and so on. We're only part of this. We're not the ones who made it. So we need to have an attitude of gratitude that we even exist. It's miraculous if you really just think about all the things that would have to happen for us to actually be here and have a conversation like this. Mm-hmm. So I just have a lot of appreciation and gratitude. And the thing I'm the most grateful for is my consciousness, that I'm able to experience all of it and I'm able to experience myself as I experience all of it. So it has to do with, in the English language, we don't have so many words for awareness and consciousness like they do in Sanskrit and Tibetan, where a lot of the language was actually built around meditation experience. So we have to use the words we have, and they're inadequate, and it really takes maybe an understanding of some of these deeper words that are from other languages. But for me, consciousness, it's a very general term, but it just has to do with being very wakeful and being very present. And if we're having thoughts of the future, we know that we're right here in this room having thoughts of the future rather than sort of going into daydreaming and being somewhere else, like we know. So if we go and we take a trip into the mountains, we know where we are and we're experience ourselves having a trip to the mountains. And we don't even have to say, wow, this is incredible. We can just experience the vividness of it all.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever had a moment in your life when you were in like a really dark place, or a what, I don't know how you would describe it, where, or where you felt tormented by consciousness or lack of consciousness, and kind of like found your music as a way that, you know, like, do you have any specific anecdotal instances of your music kind of lifting you up and like regrounding you?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, first of all, in terms of those dark places, I'm kind of a romantic, and so when you're a romantic, you also have the potential to have your heart broken.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So um, my heart's been broken more than once, um, and that those have been sort of for me like really intense times because um, you know, you have this love and this feelings that are flowing, and then there's something that seems to hinder it. So that is probably what's affected me the most. It actually led to me becoming a Buddhist and to meditating on a regular basis. Um, and um, you know, in a maybe not such a life-changing way as that, yes, sometimes life is very difficult. We live in this whole COVID world. It's been more difficult to me than I would have imagined in terms of not having as much human contact and so on. And I would just say that as a more modern thing.
Mm-hmm.
Music is really what perks me up. And it's because I relate to, I'm a, you know, I'm born in the year of the water dragon. I'm a Pisces. I relate to more ethereal world, you know, more meditation level than the mundane level, you know, accounting and all that stuff that goes on. I mean, I love music. I love chess because it's, you know, your mind. You play it in your mind, and to me, like it just, I actually am relaxed when I play chess. It's a way I relax, even though it's kind of an intense game in a sense. But for me, it's very relaxing because I'm just using my mind. So it's a sort of an alternate mind um, meld than music is. But I find that very relaxing. But for me, music, you know, it's not, it's the closest to spirit we come from any sensation in the physical world. At least that's how I experience, where it's, you know, there's no tables and chairs and cars and buses and buildings. It's something else that happens to us that we can't touch. And that's where it touches me in a very deep way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's interesting too about the chess, kind of like the idea, like when you're like focusing with your brain, it like takes away from like the emotional sensing kind of, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
For me, when I'm for me, what seems more real is when I'm meditating, when I'm able to see each thought arise and disappear, and I see kind of the emptiness, and I can go into different dhyana states, meditation states through concentration. I can also um, feel the vipassana, sort of more the gestalt of the whole environment around me. I can feel behind me, up, backwards, down, and sideways in every direction. I sense things in the room. You know, when I meditate a lot, I can tell what people are going to say right before they say it and things like that. You know, it really opens your mind to be able to be sensitive to what's happening. So for me, really, the real ground is meditation practice. And
Yeah.
music is kind of like the vehicle for me to express myself within that, I suppose, is what I would say. But for me, I have a daily meditation practice, and that is grounding, and it gets me in touch with my, um, my stream of consciousness at that point, and experience the bodhicitta, the Buddha mind, and just realize to tap into that, and then music then becomes another vehicle that I can go deeper. And I use the Buddhist meditation as a way to tap into the mind stream and not be caught in the limited conceptual reality that the conventional world is trying to dictate to us. And that in this COVID situation has become even more obvious to me. But I never bought into it, and I never will. So
Yeah. Into the conventional world.
into the conventional world, yeah, yeah.
Me neither.
Well, into the world of beliefs. I don't believe anything. I just experience.
That's probably the wiser way to do it since everything kind of changes all the time. So what do you believe? Like if you do buy into a belief.
Well, it goes back to that consciousness. More what I believe is that the only thing I really like sort of hang my hat on, so to speak, and I don't really wear hats very often anyway, but no, it's just that when we come down to it, we don't even have our name. We're not even me and you. When it comes down to it, we are part of this universe that's unfolding. And we have this point of awareness, which we can focus and experience the vividness of each moment as it arises, and just allow each moment to have the splendor that is naturally there. Or we can live where we create this limited storyline that we try to fit ourselves into, and then we're disappointed. Oh, that wasn't so good. Oh, that was okay. We're sort of like judging everything. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of just being present and being, as opposed to, um, trying to direct everything and to have all these plans. I mean, I think a lot of that is my Pisces water nature. There is a go with the flow
Mm-hmm.
sort of a approach that I have, I will admit.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the flow is looking at my consciousness and what the presence is and how I approach each situation.
Mm-hmm.
Aura, when I first started DJing, at the end of a show or a gig or anything, I would be worried about, God, did I do my job technically? Did people like my music? And that all disappeared at certain points when I, just connected with people at shows, and I realized how, difficult things were for people, and that I had the ability to raise people's consciousness. And so it kind of, more than probably 15 years ago, by the time I met you, it was more my concern was I kind to everybody? Did I help somebody? Was I able to facilitate? It was more like I could even make a mistake and then I knew everybody would forgive me. Whereas when I first started playing, I'd be horrified if I made like a technical mistake or something when I DJ'd. So I realized that really it was like my humanity. I was fortunate. I feel blessed that I'm in a situation where I'm playing music before people, and I'm able to connect with some of them, sometimes many of them after. I love the parties in Crestone because Crestone was a small town, and an entire representation of the town would come to the
Mm-hmm.
parties. I mean, there were only like a few hundred people in the town, and um, there were all ages, teenagers, young children, grandmothers, grandfathers. There was like different ages, dogs. Just different things were there at the event, and I felt like it was like connecting to this whole town, and then the whole town was in a situation where there's not a lot of money, there's not a lot of comfort from a material point of view, but there are people who smile. And I had definitely some of my greatest DJ experiences out of the town of Crestone. And you were there for some of it, so I'm grateful for that too.
Oh yeah, I'm so grateful. So grateful. Um, yeah, so much good energy there. There's powerful energy. Let's see. I guess we'll add a couple more questions. Um, do you have any heroes?
Well, there's, some of the pioneers in the music industry. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was growing up, um, Cassius Clay and then Muhammad Ali, he was just somebody that I connected with. And it's funny because I won 50 cents when Cassius Clay beat Sonny Liston. I bet this kid named Jimmy Lambertson, he said that Sonny Liston was going to kill him. And I said, no, Cassius Clay's going to win. So I won 50 cents. And then later in life, when Ali was in Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman, I bet some guy $50. He said George Foreman was going to kill him. I said, no, Muhammad Ali's going to win. And so then I bet him $50. And then I won that bet too. So I only bet twice in my life, and I won both of them. And it was because of Cassius Clay and then Muhammad Ali. So he was a hero, and not just because of his boxing skills, but that he stood up, that he refused to enter the military. And,
Mm.
um, he drew the line at beating people up, but he wasn't going to kill people, you know. But no, he refused to go into that, and he could have just probably gotten a desk job, or it would have been just a figurehead, but he refused to even have that, to participate in that. And just the fact that he held his beliefs really showed me something. So he became a hero of mine when he refused to be drafted.
Yeah.
And I later refused to be drafted too, by the way.
Oh.
So that's another story.
Well, I'm so glad because yeah, who knows? You might not be here if you.
Right.
So yeah, I'm agree with that completely. All right, if you had one piece of advice, I mean, it seems like your childhood self was like pretty like spiritually in touch, but if you had one piece of advice for your childhood self, what would it be?
Um, don't play football. Yeah, because I played football. If I had it to do over again, I was a very good wrestler. I would like wrestle and do cross country, do individual sports. But no, I played football, and I've got positional vertigo, and I played fullback. I was basically a human battering ram,
Oh.
and I developed pretty early. And my freshman year in college, I was 18 years old, and I was starting fullback on a college football team. So I
Mhm.
did that for 2 years. I played my freshman and sophomore year, and now I'm hitting people that are 250 to 300 pounds. So I have some numerous injuries, but I feel like fortunate that I came out of it as well as I did. I realized I was lucky. So um, I had some fixation about um, football for some reason, and I got into it. And if I did it over again, I would do things a little bit differently. And I would also, though, the one regret I have because I love chess so much is I wish I would have had somebody who would have mentored me when I was like 7 or 8 years old to play chess and encouraged me, because that happened more later in life.
Mhm.
And all of the great, I mean, I study all the current masters and past masters, and really the greatest chess players were all proficient at chess by the time they were somewhere between 4 and 8 years old. And it's
Wow.
just like learning another language. And so I love chess, but I have to, work at it more. And then where they just see the connections easier because having learned it at that age, the younger we are, the more our ability to learn is.
Yeah.
So I guess I wish I would have learned chess and music at an earlier age. So, but other than that, no.
Do you have any advice for anyone who's struggling with, especially today with COVID? And I'm normally, I think about 40% of the population struggles with like anxiety or depression, but they say that it's skyrocketed, with the isolation and everything. So yeah, do you have any advice for anybody who might be struggling with
Yeah.
yeah.
Put on some music. You can go to my SoundCloud, Buddha-Bomb. I've got lots of mixes, dance, move, um, meditate. Just realize that you have the power to control your own destiny and to lighten up. And don't take the things that are coming from the world as a gospel, because they're not. Just see through it all and just be true to yourself. And you have the power to wake up and overcome. And we're all free, really. So be your own guru and enjoy life. I love what I do because I do what I love. And I just do things because I love them. And sometimes I just come up to people and I give them things. And they say to me, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." And I say, "Oh, I never do things because I have to do them. I do things because I want to do them." So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Nice talking to you.